They thought shame would keep me away. But I came in uniform to be seen, not celebrated. They thought I wouldn't show up. They thought the silence they buried me in 6 years ago would be enough to keep me gone. The invitation sat on my desk like it didn't know what it carried. Embossed edges, formal font. My name printed in full, Lieutenant General Rebecca Cole. Whoever typed it must have pulled from a list one that had no idea I hadn't been Rebecca to this family in years. To them, I was an echo they refused to hear. I didn't even need to open the envelope to know what it said. The whispers had already traveled through forwarded emails, offhand comments from former classmates, an aide on base who said, "Ma'am." I heard Haley's engaged. It was real now. Haley was getting married, and not just married to Major Andrew Foster. I laughed when I read it. Not out loud, just that bitter kind of laugh that tastes like old wounds. Andrew Foster. The same soldier I pulled out of a crater in Helmand Province. The same one who whispered through bloodied lips, "I owe you." 6 years. 6 years of silence from my mother. Not a single birthday call. No condolences when I nearly lost my hearing in Kandahar. Just this, a wedding invitation, signed not with warmth or love, but with a single word written in my mother's unmistakable hand: behave. Outside the base in Stuttgart was unusually quiet. Inside my quarters were bare bones, steel bed-pressed uniforms, locked trunk of memories no one dared touch. I turned the invitation over like it might change into something kinder. The knock was a crisp double tap. Simmons. He didn't wait for permission. He never had to. He glanced at the envelope on my desk. I heard. Of course he had. Simmons heard everything. He sat down without asking. That was our rhythm. "You going?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just slid the envelope toward him. He picked it up, squinted at the lettering, and exhaled. "Foster," he muttered. "That's the kid you pulled out of the blast zone, right? Same one." He leaned back. "You saved his life. Now he's marrying your sister." We sat in silence, but ours wasn't awkward. It never had been. It was the kind of silence that understood too much to speak. "You think I should go?" I asked. Simmons studied me for a beat. "That depends. You going to fight a war? Or bury a ghost?" I smiled just barely. Maybe just watch one burn. Simmons didn't laugh. He never did when it mattered. "Then go. But don't wear your stars like armor. Wear them like memory. Let them remember who you became without them." His words stayed with me after he left. Long after the door clicked shut, after the wind outside pushed against the flagpole like it had something to say. I turned to the window. The recruits were running drills, loud and bright and oblivious. I envied them for a second. Then I pulled out my dress uniform, the one I hadn't worn since my father's funeral, the one I wasn't allowed to speak at. I laid it out, carefully smoothing the sleeves like they were still healing. That day came back sharp. Marine Corps band. 21 gun salute. My father buried with full honors, but not a single seat left for me on the front row. Barbara. My mother sat flanked by Haley and Uncle Roy, her lips pressed in that permanent line of disapproval. When I approached, she didn't even look up. Haley met my eyes just once before turning back to the casket like I was a stranger in uniform. I stood the entire ceremony. Afterward, Barbara placed a cold hand on my forearm. "You shouldn't have come in uniform," she said. "It makes it look like you're trying to upstage the family." The family. As if I hadn't been part of it. I didn't reply. I just walked away, and I hadn't returned since. Until now. Now I held a wedding invitation disguised as a command. And the groom. A man whose leg I saved from being blown off while I bled beside him. I sat down, opened my laptop, pulled up flight schedules. Richmond, Virginia, 1 stop in Frankfurt. I chose the red-eye quiet anonymous, didn't tell base command, didn't tell Simmons, didn't even tell my driver. The ticket confirmation hit my inbox in 30 seconds. I wasn't going to be welcomed. I was going to be seen for the first time in years. They mocked my silence. Then they remembered who I am. The flight landed 20 minutes early. Dulles smelled like overused hand sanitizer and ambition. My military ID got me through customs without a hiccup. No flags, no banners, just sterile tiles and artificial lighting. As I stepped into the arrivals hall, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I almost let it ring out of spite. Then curiosity won. "Hello," I answered, voice flat. Well. You actually came." "Haley." Her voice hadn't changed. Still sugar on the outside, metal underneath. I didn't say I was coming to celebrate, I said, already moving toward the escalator. "You didn't say anything for 6 years," she replied too brightly. "So, this is progress. No apology. Not even a flicker of guilt. I came because I was invited." "Right. Because Mom guilted you into it." I didn't answer. "Well, she chirped Andrew's looking forward to seeing you. You two always had chemistry." I stopped mid-step. "That wasn't funny." "I didn't mean it to be," she said, but the smirk was audible. Then came the real reason she called. "I just wanted to make sure you weren't showing up in full uniform. It's not exactly festive." I ended the call without replying. Outside, Virginia was blooming. Dogwoods, cherry blossoms, everything looking like a postcard someone mailed from a version of life that had never included me. I didn't take the freeway. I weaved through side streets I used to ride my bike down back, when scraped knees were the worst kind of pain. Mrs. Langford was outside pruning her hydrangeas, the hose coiled at her feet like a question mark. She squinted as I pulled into the cul-de-sac. "Rebecca," she called. I stepped out, duffel on one shoulder. "Hi, Mrs. Langford." She blinked. "Well, my goodness. Still in the military?" "Yes, ma'am." Her eyes skimmed my uniform. "I thought maybe you left after everything." "Some of us stay," I said, walking past her hedges. The Cole house looked exactly as I remembered. Too perfect. Too polished. Too quiet. Barbara answered the door, beige slacks, pearl-collared blouse, hair pulled into its usual helmet of control. Her eyes scanned my uniform, resting for a beat on the ribbons. "Please don't ruin this for Haley," she said. They used to call my silence disrespectful. Now they found it convenient. Inside, nothing had changed. Same chandelier, same polished mahogany, same undercurrent of tension, humming beneath every decorative centerpiece. 14 guests, 15 seats, one battlefield disguised as a dinner table. I hovered just inside the archway, invisible by design. Barbara busied herself arranging wine glasses and napkins, her gold anchor earrings flashing a nod to my father's service. Haley sat at the table, already glowing in a silk blouse, laughing too loudly at something our cousin said. I knew that laugh. The one she used when she was performing. My seat. It wasn't next to Haley, not even in the middle. They'd placed me by the sideboard near the kitchen door where the heat kissed your neck and conversation never reached. I pulled out the chair. It creaked. Haley raised her glass. "To family," she announced. To new beginnings, Barbara added eyes flicking past me like I was dust. To Major Foster and the bride-to-be Uncle Dean chimed in. No one said my name, no mention of my rank, no Rebecca's back, just blank space. The wine hadn't made it down to my end. Maybe it wasn't supposed to. Colonel Wilkins, retired, still sharp, furrowed his brow when he saw me. "You look familiar," he said. Barbara jumped in. "She's been overseas doing security work." The words hit like a slap dressed up as small talk. Security detail, Haley clarified, her smile weaponized. "She guards doors. Important ones, I'm sure." Chuckles. Tight. Measured. They hovered near her, never touching me. I stared at the silverware. Salad fork, dessert spoon, knife too dull to draw blood. My silence wasn't surrender, but to this family it had always been a threat. Then Wilkins squinted. "Wait a minute. Afghanistan. Fob Kalma. 2012. I met his gaze. "Yes, sir." His mouth opened, then closed again. He looked to Barbara. She shook her head. Tiny. Almost imperceptible. He turned back to his plate, and I let the silence grow. No one asked me a question. No one looked my way. I could have been a well-dressed ghost, but even ghosts leave a chill. When the server finally reached my side of the table with wine, I took it without a word. Then came Haley. "So how long are you here for, Becky?" she asked sweetly. "Or are you on call to guard a missile silo or something?" A ripple of smirks down the table. I took a slow sip. Let the silence stretch. Then I set the glass down and said, "The people I guard outrank this entire room." Everything stopped. Not loud, not dramatic, just still. Even the chandelier seemed to hold its breath. No one laughed. They didn't know where to place me anymore. I thought they ignored me. Turns out they tried to destroy me. The church foyer was a sea of white lilies, satin ribbons and names, printed, sorted, arranged like a seating chart could erase history. I scanned the display. Cousins, plus ones, old neighbors. Everyone had a place. Except me, no Rebecca, no Lieutenant General Cole. Just a single table tucked in the corner of the chart, table 12 next to the emergency exit. Barbara had mentioned it that morning, almost like an afterthought. "You'll be at 12, out of view for everyone's sake." I didn't reply. The church was beautiful, whitewashed, orderly, curated. A woman in a headset adjusted bows on pews like she was prepping for a magazine shoot. I wasn't part of the aesthetic. I was an interruption they hoped would remain seated and silent. Barbara spotted me first. She drifted over like beige smoke pearls gleaming beneath the chandelier. "You clean up well," she said, eyes brushing my medals like they might tarnish the air. "Just remember, no press. If anyone asks, tell them you're in logistics." I stared at her. "I command brigades." She tilted her head. "And today, you're a guest." Before I could answer, the photographer brushed past Lens, swinging toward Haley and her bridesmaids. No click for me. The ceremony was brief, sanitized. Haley glided down the aisle in perfect white. Andrew stood tall beside her gaze, scanning the pews, until it found me. He didn't nod, didn't blink, just looked, then looked away. No one mentioned the woman who once dragged his bleeding body out of a minefield. Apparently that didn't match the color scheme. When the priest called for close family to join the blessing, I stood instinctively. Barbara's hand was already there, light on my elbow. Her voice a whisper. "Let's not confuse things. This is Haley's day." I sat back down. Flashbulbs flickered. Guests dabbed their eyes. The violinist began something sentimental. At the reception, my table sat behind a pillar next to the kitchen door. My place card read simply, "R. Cole, no rank." The napkin at my setting was a different shade, paler, off by just enough. Accident or message, I didn't care anymore. A waiter poured wine for the table, skipped mine. When I asked, he glanced at the list. "Oh, non-drinking guest." I didn't correct him. Haley floated through the room like a debutante on a victory lap. Her dress caught the light like it owed her something. Andrew followed half a step behind glass in hand gaze, unfocused. No one looked my way. At one point, a woman leaned over and asked if I worked security for the venue. I smiled. Yes. Then the toasts began. Barbara raised her glass. "To love and loyalty," she said. "Two things this family values above all." The room chuckled politely. Haley beamed. Andrew's jaw clenched. I took a sip of the wine I finally poured myself. It tasted expensive and empty. Then Haley reached for the mic. She smiled as if she were already posing for the headlines. To think she began sweetly, even my big sister made it tonight, all the way from wherever she's stationed now. A few guests chuckled. Guarding doors for greatness, she continued glancing at me. Let's give a round of applause for the silent sentinel in our lives. Applause, laughter. Not kind, not warm, the kind of laugh that scrapes. Barbara chimed in from her table, voice sharp. She's the shame of this family, but at least she made it on time. The room tilted. I rose, not in anger, not in haste, just inevitably. Andrew was already watching me. Haley's smile faltered. Only for a second. Then she lifted the mic again. "Oh, come on," she laughed. "It's a joke. Lighten up, Rebecca. You always took everything." That's when Andrew moved. He crossed the room, not rushed, not hesitant, just decided. He reached me, stopped one pace away, and saluted. A sharp, clean, regulation-perfect salute. "Ma'am," he said, "please forgive my wife." Then he turned to the room. "This is Major General Rebecca Cole, my commanding officer." The room gasped, not whispered. Gasped, like someone had pulled a fire alarm made of truth. I didn't move. Haley staggered backward. The mic slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a hollow thud. Barbara stood too fast, knocking over her champagne. "Rebecca," she started, but the word crumbled in her throat. Then from the second row near the ice sculpture, someone else stood. Colonel Reardon, retired, battle-scarred, proud. He raised his hand in salute. Then another. General Park. Then a woman in her 50s. Army once, career, survivor. One by one, 4 salutes rose from around the room. Not dramatic, not loud, just absolute. Barbara found her voice again. This is not the time, she snapped. But no one looked at her. The room had reoriented, thread by thread, until every stitch pointed to me. And I didn't even speak, because sometimes silence isn't retreat. Sometimes it's power waiting for the right moment to stand. They wanted silence. I became policy. The hotel lounge felt like velvet shadows and repressed truths. Barbara sat across from me, coffee-untouched pearls still around her neck, like armor made of lies. She called me by my middle name. Ela, she said soft, like it meant something. I didn't correct her. I just waited. "You certainly made a statement," she said. I didn't answer. She glanced down, then back up, masking nerves with faux dignity. The media is buzzing, and not all of it is flattering. Still, I said nothing. "We weren't prepared for that moment," she added. "No one was. Not even Haley fainting," I cut in. Barbara blinked. "Haley has sensitivities to reality?" I asked. Her lips tightened, her composure cracking in the corners. "I didn't come here to fight," she said. "Then why are you here?" She shifted. "I thought maybe you'd be willing to speak to the press, to clarify things, explain that, well, we didn't fully understand your role." I stared. "You want me to clean up your discomfort to protect the illusion of a family that erased me?" Barbara's voice sharpened. "I was protecting the family." "No," I said. Calm, exact. "You erased a daughter." She looked down, tried again. "I made choices, imperfect ones, but I never stopped caring. You just stopped calling." Barbara's back straightened like she was pulling her grief into posture. "If you'd told us I did," I interrupted. "You just didn't want to hear it." Then came the truth I'd carried like shrapnel. I wasn't loud. I was visible. There's a difference. And that was when I knew this wasn't about reconciliation. It was about optics. She wanted silence again, the kind you could iron, fold, and place behind crystal. The next day I met Haley at the cafe downstairs. She was 10 minutes late, sunglasses still on despite the low light. She looked put together if you didn't know how fear wore silk. She slid into the booth, lips curled like this was a formality. "Well," she said, "that was dramatic." I didn't speak. She sighed. "Look, last night went too far. The gate guard joke, it was just that. A joke. That's the problem," I said, folding my hands. "You never think. You script." She blinked. "Excuse me?" I pulled a paper from my folio. Thick. Stamped. Watermarked by the Department of the Army. She tilted her head, amused. "What's this supposed to be? A tip?" "It is," I said. "Sent to a military whistleblower hotline 7 years ago. Claimed I falsified deployment details. Said my Bronze Star was political." Her face paled, but she didn't blink. "I've never seen that." I pulled out a second page. A linguistic match report. 96% match. One giveaway word, irregardless. "You were the only one who used that?" I said. "Even in school essays." Haley swallowed. I was angry. "You were always the star. Dad's pride. The hero. I just wanted space." "So you buried me?" I asked, still calm. She opened her mouth. "You destroyed me so you could shine brighter," I said. "But you forgot I burn." That night I met Andrew on a rooftop bar, quiet, dim away from curated noise. He was already there, glass in hand, guilt in his posture. "I didn't think you'd come," he said. "You asked." He nodded. "Didn't mean you'd say yes." We stood in silence for a beat. "She doesn't know, does she?" I asked. He didn't look at me. "No, I never told her about Helmond, about what you did. I knew she'd weaponize it, turn it into some fable. You deserved better." I didn't reply. "I followed your career," he continued. "Clipped the article when you got your second star. No one knew, because I owed you. Then why marry her?" I asked. He paused. "Because it was easy. Because I was tired of almost dying. I thought she was safe." "She's not," I said. "She's strategy." He gave a bitter laugh. "Yeah, figured that out about a week after I proposed." "You know she sent in the tip, right?" I asked. His eyes closed. I suspected. I didn't want to be sure. Now I am. I nodded. "Then don't ever use my name to protect yours again." The next morning I stood at the airport. Civilian clothes, duffel on one shoulder. A swarm of press caught me near TSA. Flashes. Voices. "General Cole, did you know the bride would say that, 'Did the groom really serve under you? I should have kept walking.' But I didn't. Instead, I stepped to a nearby podium. Flimsy. Meant for tourism announcements. They hushed. "I know why you're here," I began. "You want a headline, a quote, something sharp, something sellable. Well, here it is." I paused. "I'm not my family's failure. I am their silence made visible. Gasps. Real ones. No scripts. No filters. For years, I served this country while being written out of my own story. I wore the uniform while they whispered that I was a stain on the Cole name. I pulled a second paper from my jacket. This morning, I filed formal paperwork for a new initiative, the Resilience Foundation, a legal and psychological resource for military personnel betrayed by family. Because some wounds come from those who swear they love you. They stood frozen. This wasn't vengeance. It was visibility. If you've been erased, gaslit, disowned, we see you. You still serve. You still matter." One voice behind me whispered. Damon, a young cadet, stepped forward and saluted. I returned it. No words, just respect. And with that, I walked toward the gate knowing I'd never again walk alone. They erased me to feel safe. Now they fear the truth I became. The Pentagon briefing room smelled like carpet cleaner and unspoken decisions. Navy walls, brass plaques, and chairs filled with generals, advisors, policy analysts. They stared at me not in opposition, not in awe, just in calculation. Behind me, the screen glowed with 3 words, Resilience Protection Protocol. I stood at the lectern, hands steady. No notes, no script, just truth that had nowhere else to go. "This protocol addresses a fracture no one likes to name," I began. "Service members sabotaged not by foreign adversaries, but by family." There were murmurs, some skeptical, some nodding, most silent. I clicked to Slide 1, Retention Losses linked to personal betrayal. Slide 2, Unresolved internal complaints never escalated. Slide 3, Mental health crises tied to character defamation by spouses and relatives. Currently, we wait until it's too late, until the promotion disappears, the record darkens, or worse, until the silence becomes permanent. We lose soldiers not to war, but to whispers. Then came the hand. Admiral Krunner, the same man who once called a female major emotional for asking a question he didn't like. With respect, General Cole, he said, "This sounds personal." I didn't flinch. "All policy is personal," I said, "or it's propaganda." The room froze. You could hear someone exhale near the back. I let the silence stretch. "We have protocols for battlefield trauma. For wounds, you can see. But what about betrayal that shows up in emails and lies in the silence of a family who should have known better? When a mother leaks your record? When a sister files an anonymous tip? When a spouse sells your name for clicks? This isn't drama. It's a breach. And it needs defense. Slide 4, 3-tier support model. Immediate legal protection, verified psychological counseling, career shielding, and full reinstatement reviews. The younger officers leaned forward. Kuchner stayed silent. I closed the file. "We train our people to survive war," I said. "It's time we protect them from peace." The room didn't erupt, But the Undersecretary of Defense folded his hands, looked me square in the eye, and said, "We'll fund it." That was all I needed. Later that night, I stood in front of my childhood home again. Same lawn, same hedges, but now they looked smaller. Barbara answered the door. No pearls, no lipstick. Just age wrapped in a pale cardigan. She looked tired, maybe from lying for so long. "Come in," she said. "We didn't go far, just the front room. No tea, no performance." She sat. I stayed standing. "I didn't know how to protect you without erasing you," she said. "You didn't," I replied. "You just erased me." She looked down. "I thought if we distanced you, it would fade. That you could build a life quietly, somewhere else." "You didn't bury me in silence," I said. "You made me unforgettable." There was a sound on the stairs. Haley. She didn't speak. She just stood there, robe-loose face pale, a version of herself that finally had no control. Barbara whispered, "She hasn't been the same since the wedding. She never had to be anything I said. She just got to exist. I had to survive." Barbara's eyes glistened. "Is there anything I can do now?" I looked at her. "Yes. Don't rewrite my story after I'm gone. Don't say I was distant. Say you made a choice. And so did I." She nodded, fingers trembling slightly, reaching for a hand that would no longer wait. I left. No hug, no slam of the door, just the echo of choices finally understood. At the community center a week later, the folding chairs were mismatched. The coffee stale, but the room full 30 veterans, a few active duty, some in plain clothes, others in partial uniform. The banner behind me read, "We don't erase the wounded, we empower them." I rolled my sleeves just enough to remind them I'd been both. "You are not unstable," I said. "You are not dramatic. You are witnesses, and we don't shame witnesses anymore. We train them to lead." A girl 17 maybe raised her hand. "My sister was discharged last year," she said. "She tried to report harassment. They said she was too emotional. Now no one will take her case." I stepped forward. "Bring her story to us," I said. "We'll take it from here." She exhaled like she hadn't in months. A man near the back stood, older, ex-military. "My son said your speech at the Pentagon was the first time he felt seen in years." I nodded. "You tell him he wasn't wrong. We were." Someone checked their phone. Then another. Then came the whisper, "It's viral." The airport video, 20,000 views, then 50, then news outlets, then headlines. Major General Cole speaks out. Betrayal protocol introduced by decorated officer. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just let it happen. Let them see. Let them understand what legacy feels like when truth finally speaks louder than silence. I used to live to be seen. Now I see myself, and that's enough. The shutters creaked as the Mediterranean wind slipped through them, trailing the scent of salt and sun-ripened lemons. Afternoon light poured across the tile floor of my cottage, an old stone home on the Amalfi Cliffs, far from duty stations and war rooms. I'd painted all morning, nothing grand, just color on canvas, where shadows used to live. My easel faced the sea. The unfinished sky waited patiently. No alarms, no orders, just the sound of waves brushing stone like a memory too soft to leave. At 4 p.m., sharp, there was a knock. Luca, the boy from the village, 10 years old, all teeth and curiosity. He handed me a basket olives bread and a folded newspaper I hadn't asked for. "Grazie," I said. "Prego," he grinned. "Sora." "Were you really a general?" I paused, then smiled. "Once," I said. "Now I fight for myself." He nodded satisfied and ran off before I could say more. I set the basket down, pulled open the drawer by my writing desk. Inside, my Army-issued phone. Still working, still silent. It buzzed. A voicemail. Simmons. Rebecca. His voice said level but laced with something warmer. "The president's office called. They want to appoint you to the Joint Ethics Board. You'd chair it. Think about it." I didn't call back. I opened my journal instead. The final page waited. I dipped the pen, held it above the paper for a long breath, then wrote, "I walked alone, but not lost. The ink dried slow. I closed the cover, locked it in the drawer, then walked out to the terrace. The sea met me like an old friend. No applause, no uniform, no headlines, just a woman who had vanished, learning how to return. They never apologized, but now they say my name with care. Not from love, from power. They used to ask, why doesn't she come home? Now they know I didn't leave. I was pushed, and I built something stronger on the way down. Justice didn't come from vengeance. It came from presence, from standing, from refusing to disappear. The symposium hall in D.C. was standing room only. Veterans, civilians, press, survivors. I didn't need notes. I walked to the podium and let silence settle first. I was once told I began that blood is thicker than water. As if drowning in blood somehow hurts less. There was a ripple, soft and real. Sometimes betrayal doesn't wear a uniform. Sometimes it serves you dinner, raises you, smiles at your wedding, then erases you from the photos. A few gasps, some nods. I continued. I disappeared not out of shame, but because I was punished for speaking, because I wouldn't shrink to fit their comfort. I paused, then said, "That ends today." I introduced the new legislation federal protections for service members betrayed by family, a clause named after me, not a monument, a policy, not revenge, correction. After the speech, a young reporter caught me backstage. "Would you ever go back to them?" she asked. I didn't blink. "I never left myself," I said, and that was enough. I no longer live to be seen. Now I live to see myself clearly, without apology, without shrinking, without waiting for permission. The final brushstroke hit the canvas that evening. I set the paint down, stepped back, not to judge, just to admire the way color returns when you finally stop asking for permission to exist. They used to say I was the shame of the Cole family. Now they pause when they say my name, because it echoes, because it means something, because it stands for every woman who was ever told to sit down, be quiet, make herself smaller. If this story moved you, like, share and subscribe, and in the comments tell us. Type 1 if you've ever been erased by someone you trusted. Type 2 if you're still learning to stand in your own name. We see you, and we are not quiet anymore.